Hi there. When we think about enablement, we often focus on tools, processes, or performance, but rarely on how the brain itself supports learning and change. Yet the way our brain learns, adapts, and transforms sits right at the intersection of human behavior and business transformation. And understanding that connection changes everything about how we design growth inside organizations. My guest today, Dakota Fitzgerald, brings that missing layer. She spent years exploring how curiosity, emotion, and reward shape behavior and drive real learning.
So, Dakota, thank you for taking this opportunity to talk to me and be my guest in this podcast. We have been working together for a few years now, and there are a ton of programs and projects that we have worked together. And you always came back with a very nice energy and vibe, and so much rich knowledge about enablement, about learning practices, what I wanted to ask you. I'm very curious, what is your journey? Because you have such a rich background. Would you please tell us a few words about you?
Thanks, Maria. Absolutely. And I love your energy as well. I'm so happy to be here with you. So, I'd love to tell you about my journey and kind of how I've come to where I am today. It's funny. I started out chasing a dream in broadcast journalism. I worked at a small local news station and I was fresh out of an intensive IB program in high school. So, if you know, you know. Then college hit, and I realized that the major I chose was not worth the price tag. So I hit pause, I grabbed a backpack, and I went searching for myself. Along the way, I worked a few jobs here and there, and then plus my husband secretly enrolled me in a coding course. We had always geeked out about IoT technology without even knowing what that was. And it turns out he just saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. I fell in love with technology. I landed a role in the Microsoft CSP team at TD SYNNEX, then went on to become the North American cloud strategist for the organization. After that, moved into what is the Global Specialized Skills team, and I now have the pleasure and distinct honor of leading that team. And it's been an absolutely wild ride from newsroom to cloud strategy, but it all started with somebody believing in me before I was able to believe in myself. So I'm happy to share that.
Nice, nice. First of all, kudos to you that you give up on everything that you were started building at that young age and you took this brave step, because it is brave. The beginning, we are all a little bit afraid, unsure, and all that. And you were lucky that you had someone, on board on the same journey of finding out what is the best for me, and having a partner that supports your search on, okay, what I'm doing next, and supporting all that. So before we dive into the partner enablement and all these nice things that we have worked together, I wanted to ask you what sparked your curiosity into the learning and into all these nice things, because we had a few moments to catch up and to pitch me your ideas and your angle in all of this.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to dive in. And before we do that, again, I have to thank you. I think that you have built something amazing here. Genuinely excited to be here and share with you and all of your listeners. But the space that you've created with this podcast is such a powerful example of community and where we can really show up, be ourselves, share, and learn from each other. So again, kudos to you and thanks for having me.
Thank you.
So, what sparked my curiosity about how the brain learns? Honestly, I've always been fascinated by how people grow through shared experiences. I grew up playing competitive soccer, and even now, I still carry lessons from coaches that shaped how I show up in life. But I remember distinctly wondering, did those same lessons hit my teammates the same way, right? They were there experiencing it with me. Did they hear that one line the same way I heard it? And did they internalize it the same way? So I would watch their gameplay closely and I would look for subtle shifts and I would try to decode if there was something I could learn about how they experienced those same moments. But the real turning point was during that backpacking trip. I had to really strip away the comforts that we usually rely on and relearn how to navigate the world. And that experience rewired something in me. I became hyper aware of how my brain was adapting. And that, in and of itself, just sparked a deeper curiosity, which is what's actually happening in our minds when we learn, and how do those changes show up in our lives. So that is what kicked the journey off for me.
Amazing. So the other time that we were discussing, you did a very interesting analogy about the human motherboard and how our brain works in something in a similar way. Would you like to, walk me through your thinking?
Sure. This is a really fun topic for me, I think, and it's something that I think we can all relate to. So, when I was backpacking, it really got me thinking. If our brains are constantly rewiring and adapting, what's the actual system behind that? Because again, as I was experiencing things differently from a different viewpoint, a different perspective, I was approaching challenges differently. I was really viewing the world in a different way because of the way that I was approaching the particular situation or scenario. And that's where I started drawing parallels between the human brain and something we all interact with daily, whether we realize it or not, right, is technology. So if you think about it, our brain is like the ultimate CPU. It's constantly processing inputs, it's making decisions, it's storing data, it's constantly optimizing performance. And just like a motherboard, it connects all of the components of a computer, right? So our neural networks do the same thing for our brain and for our bodies, helps us to function, learn, and evolve. And the more that I explored that particular analogy, the more I realized how powerful it is, not just in understanding how we learn, but in how we can intentionally upgrade ourselves. So when I think about learning, I don't just think about absorbing information. I really think about how we can rewire, reboot, and even overclock our own systems to unlock new levels of performance and self-empowerment.
That is indeed, if you really think about it, it is, let's say, an analogy. It's like it's a mirror. It's like a mirror, how it happens in the motherboard and what it happens in our own motherboard, which is our brain.
Exactly. You're constantly consuming data, right? And those data points are coming from all different directions throughout your day. And it's about how your body is receiving it. What is your brain doing with that information? And sometimes it's, you're doing it intentionally. Sometimes it's completely unintentional. And it's really interesting how that manifests in your life.
Yeah. Do you think people, they're lacking motivation in order, to look forward and search and achieve their goals, their learning goals, or is something else that is blocking them?
Mm. Yeah, it's a great question. When people ask me if I think individuals are losing motivation to learn, my answer is not really. I don't think it's a lack of motivation. I think it's more like information overload. So you think about, your PC, it's gotten too hot, you've left it plugged in, you forgot to unplug it, the fan is just whirring, and everything just slows down, right? I think we're living in a time where knowledge is everywhere. It's so accessible, it's coming at us from all different directions, and that can be paralyzing. And to add to that, the fact that sometimes the why behind learning isn't clear. If we don't see the personal or collective benefit, it's really easy to tune out because there's so much going on. So I don't think it's that there's a lack of motivation. I think this is really where self-empowerment comes in. right? I don't think learning is just about gaining skills. That is a vital, important part of it, but it's about upgrading our internal operating systems. So, how do we become more adaptable? How do we become more aware and more capable of contributing to something much bigger than ourselves? So, it's not, I just believe it's genuinely a responsibility of ourselves to keep progressing, not just for personal growth, but also for the evolution of humanity as a whole. That's why we need to learn.
Yeah. This reminds me, it takes me to, like at the core of inspiration, when you mention about the reasons, the why we are learning. This is really like the core of inspiration we take. This is what really motivates us to move forward with learning.
Yes. Absolutely. And you have to think too, when we're learning, we're not just downloading new data, right? I think sometimes people can approach learning from a check the box initiative. I know I need to do that thing. I need to complete that course. I need to, finish that PDF or that learning cycle. And I'm going to do that just to check that box. But it's so much more than just downloading new data. It's about reshaping how we think, how we connect, and how we show up in the world. And when we do that collectively, that's when real transformation happens. If you think about, in today's world, technology is hyper connected. So devices are talking to each other, systems sync up in real time, data flows invisibly across networks. And I believe it's the same kind of experience. Truly, it's that invisible connection that exists between humans. So whether it's through shared experiences, energy, or even just being present with someone, like right now, we're here together doing this podcast in an amazing environment, space, and community that you've created. But through this shared experiences, we're learning new things about each other and about ourselves. So we're constantly influencing and learning from each other. And sometimes we don't even realize it. And that's the beauty of learning. It doesn't always have to be intentional, but there does have to be a motivating factor behind it.
So, in enablement and in leadership, how do you identify and address the lack of motivation and the gaps that drives the people in learning?
That's a really powerful question, Maria, because motivation gaps aren't always loud. They're often subtle. They're often buried under layers of information overload, burnout, or even fear. It just manifests differently from person to person. And I think you have to be very empathetic and in tune with the individual to identify those gaps and then start to address them. So in enablement and leadership, I've learned that identifying those gaps really starts with understanding the why behind someone's behavior. So you'll notice throughout this conversation, we kind of keep going back to the why. And it's really important because that is a motivational factor. And again, those change from person to person. So you start not just with understanding why someone is doing something that they're doing or maybe not doing, and you have to understand what's driving it or blocking it. We live in a world where information is coming at us like a fire hose, right? We've talked about that. We're interconnected. Everything is happening around us all the time. A lot of data. And while access to knowledge is incredible, it can also paralyze people. They don't know where to start. They don't know what's relevant. They don't know how to apply it. That's where leadership becomes less about pushing content and more about creating clarity. It's about helping people filter out the noise and reconnect with purpose. So I think we really have to drill down into the why, what motivates people, how do we empower them to empower themselves? And once we create that clarity, we can start tapping into those particular motivational factors for the individual.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This is something that, because we both work in the IT industry, and something that we have been asked even a few times, like many IT professionals, they consume a lot of content, right? How much of this it is retained and it is actually applied?
No, it's a great question. There's so many industry standards and research elements out there that we could point to and tap into. So here's one that I think is really interesting. a particular study shows that adults forget up to 70% of new information within 24 hours and up to 90% within a week if it's not reinforced or applied. And that's wild, right? I mean, you think you're learning something new, and however you learn, it could be reading something, it could be watching a video, it could be doing a course, doing something intensive, it could just be passive learning. You walk by someone, you accidentally overhear a conversation, and that person happened to be sharing a fun fact right at the time as you were walking by, and you internalize that. And so you have passively learned something, but 70% of that new information gets dumped right back out within 24 hours because there's more coming in, and we're not prioritizing what's important to us, and we don't have clarity on the why behind why we're learning what we're learning to really internalize it. And then again, within a week, up to 90% of that, if it's not reinforced or applied, is completely dumped out. So that's why I think it's really important to build trust, build capability, make sure that you are actively applying what you learn, and make sure the time you're spending on learning is worthwhile for you. It's not a check the box initiative. It's something that's truly going to benefit you.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's really interesting is the learning while doing, right? We found that 70% of skills are learned on the job, while only 10% of those skills come from formal training. And that stat alone flips the traditional training model on its head. It means we have to meet the individuals just in time. We have to integrate deeply into their workday and into their sales cycle, for example, and bring the just in time knowledge to them and create an environment where it's safe to fail, where they can go and try things out, they can test it, they can apply the knowledge, they can learn by doing. That's going to help them to retain that information. And it's also going to build the confidence and credibility that they need to actively apply that long term, so it will become second nature.
Mm-hmm. And actually, this is the true enablement of an individual.
Yes.
And in extent of a business, actually. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that connects with what from the marketing and the go-to-market and all this business side, especially for marketing. This is something that I was always, when I am from the beginning of my career, when I was drafting content, or either it is product marketing or it is, let's say, a campaign or whatever. The main rule here is that the people, they can focus only on one thing at a time. So you have, for example, I will deviate a little bit from our conversation. Like you might have, for example, a solution that has so many nice features, but you really need to select the one single that actually changes and the whole view, the whole angle, and actually turns it's the switching point on the decision point, and you really see, like, from how we started about the motherboard, about the learning curve, about the learning challenges, the reason, the motivation, the inspiration, and all that, it all comes together. And my next question is, if there is one principle about how our brain learns and that everyone in business should know, what would it be?
Wow. So big question. Just really quick before I answer that, which I'm excited to, there was something you just mentioned there about really the human inability to multitask. And this is such an interesting topic to me because I think we sometimes pride ourselves on being good at doing multiple things at a time. And I think we kind of fool ourselves a little bit. I don't believe that we are good multitaskers. I think we're very good at task switching. So you may be able to commit 100% of your focus to something in, from 30 seconds, and then you immediately task switch and can commit your 100% energy and attention to something else. And that's how our brain operates, is you're constantly task switching. You're not truly multitasking. So you might be task switching quickly, which makes you feel like you're doing more than one thing at one time. But genuinely, you're so right. I think the brain operates in a way that you need to commit your attention to one thing at a time. And if we can just expand that attention span a little bit, I think the state of our world with doom scrolling and constant TikTok videos has it to an extent does a little bit of a disservice. I think there's a lot of fun in it, and you can escape, from the reality for a short amount of time to get refreshed and renewed. But when we think about learning, there is a critical point, inflection point, if you will, where we have to be honest with ourselves and we have to truly look at what we are trying to accomplish. Again, identify the why. Have you said, this is important enough for me to spend time on it? Yes, it is. This is valuable enough for me. It's going to improve myself from a career perspective, or it's going to empower me to do more. It's going to make me feel motivated. Therefore, I've identified the why and I agree I should do it. We cannot then expect the way in which we consume information to be dopamine hit after dopamine hit. It means you have to lock in. You have to spend an hour of your time not scrolling, not looking for the next dopamine hit from TikTok. Really lock in, read the text, read the book, right? And I think it's that dedication and that discipline that we have to focus a lot harder on because of the way that the world is today. So it was just interesting that you mentioned the multitasking versus task switching. When we decide to do something, we have to really lock in and do it and find enough value in it to really pay attention and commit more than 30 seconds to learning something, right? But you asked a question about the one principle. If there's one principle about how our brain learns that everyone in business should know, I think it's that you don't learn because you're told to, you learn because you feel like it. And that can be kind of hard to swallow, I think, sometimes. We're wired to remember what moves us. We're not wired to just do what we're told. And I'm a little bit of a rebel. I have, a chief troublemaker has been a term that's been thrown around, and I totally embrace it. The reason is because if we're constantly being told what to do, we find a lack of value in doing the thing. I don't know if you relate to this, Maria, but I'm just going to go on a tangent for a second. Was there ever a time growing up and you knew the task you needed to complete, and you already had in your mind, I'm going to go do that thing, right? Whether it's brush your teeth, get ready for bed, whatever it is, I'm going to go and do that. But then, mom, dad, guardian, someone who loves you and cares about you and is only telling you because they love you, they come and tell you, hey, don't forget to brush your teeth, don't forget to get ready for bed. And in that instant, you were like, I was totally going to, but now that you told me to, I'm really not interested. Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, because you have to do. It's not because you are inspired to do, because you're not communicated what will be the benefits, why it is nice, how you are gonna feel, how you're gonna experience during and after, and all that. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense, and ties up actually all the go-to-market strategy, if you ask me.
Yes, exactly. And that's why storytelling and shared experiences and even struggles are so powerful in learning environments. When something resonates emotionally, it creates a deeper imprint. So in that moment, there was a struggle that happened. It was I was going to do that before you told me to go do that. And now I don't want to do that because you didn't trust me to get it done. You didn't think I was going to be responsible enough. Maybe you don't know that I understand what needs to be done of me and I can live up to expectations, or, you name it. There's so much emotionally that's happening in that moment that encourage you not to do the thing that you're told to do. And so I'm not saying that directives and clear direction, that is very valuable, but we also have to tie the why and the inspiration and the motivation to the learning. So in today's constant information overload world that we live in, the real skill isn't just absorbing more, it's knowing what to filter, what to feel, and what to act on. And that's where growth lives. So I would just remind people, you don't learn because you're told to. You learn because you feel like it. So make yourself feel like it. Find the why behind learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And having this experience, both you and I, in global teams, dealing with so many different factions and so many different cultures and even generations and all that, you see how, if I can say, and you can tell me if you agree with that. Um, there is a shifting on the skills. Um, in the whole discussion that we had today, I realized how in the 90s, the number one skill that across all kind of jobs that was required, it was how good you are in multitasking.
Mm.
And today, if you go, let's say, in front of a hiring manager and say that, they will consider you that you cannot focus, that you cannot have progress, that you're not concentrated, you don't have a strategy in your head. And I think that this change, this transition is good. And what I also see is that one extra skill that we need to start paying attention in teams is the appetite to learn.
I
This is,
agree.
this is something that really changes. It doesn't matter if you have the full set, it doesn't matter if you have, let's say, everything. The idea is that you really want to learn.
Yes. And people want to learn, right? Sometimes what can be perceived as someone is unmotivated.
Mhm.
I don't think they're unmotivated. I think they're overwhelmed. I think they're
Yeah.
disconnected, or maybe they're stuck in a loop of self-doubt. David Goggins is amazing. For those of you who don't know, I would encourage you to go and watch some videos, read some books by David Goggins. But one of his quotes that I adore is, the mind always has the tactical advantage over you. It knows your fears, it knows your insecurities, and it knows your limits. You have to override it. And that's why I believe enablement, it's not just about skill building, it's about mindset rewiring. So when that hiring manager is asking what truly I believe is an impossible ask, how good are you at multitasking, right? Oh, we don't multitask. That's not a thing that happens. Our brain doesn't operate that way. We task switch. So if you're asking me how good I am about task switching, I can do this and I can do this and I can do this, and I can switch back and forth between the things, I'm great at that. But to your point, nowadays, I think we have to understand the appetite to learn. I think we have to create safe spaces, right? So in IT and enablement, especially, we're constantly asked, and we're constantly asking people to consume content. So where do we create the space to fail? Where do we create the space to be really open and honest and direct? Because growth doesn't happen in comfort zones.
Yeah.
So when you are uncomfortable, excuse me, when you're uncomfortable, that's when you're going to learn something new. When you mess up, when you have space to reflect on it and then iterate, that's the rewiring process. It has to be a space of uncomfortability. And as leaders, we are responsible for creating a safe space for individuals to learn, to fail, to it's safe to fail. You iterate, you improve, you continue to get better, and it's through that trial and error and that feedback loop, that's where the rewiring of our brain happens. But it's an unreasonable ask to put people in positions and tell them, hey, go and learn something or go and do this, if we're not also willing to create that space for them to do it safely, to figure out their why, to rewire their brains and help to guide them along that journey and really inspire them to unlock their full potential.
Yeah, absolutely. And on a closing note, since we are working on the same organization, we are working in distribution. I want to say that how important it is on our enablement, the experiential learning that we see, especially for the IT tech people, that they have their hands on a device, on an environment, on on a system and see actually and play with it, this is really the real value. So
Yes.
thank you so much. It was really a pleasure. Offline, we are going to extend the conversation. Absolutely. I have a million other questions to ask, but it was amazing that I had you today. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, Maria, for creating the space. It's been a blast, and I can't wait to keep talking to you about the topic.
Thank you.